Thank you, Terry and Bob. Thank you all so much for FMB and Lundberg Imaging and WPSD for being sponsors this morning. Workshops like this give employers an opportunity to network and to learn from time to time some new tools that they can bring to their business. And I appreciate their investment with the Chamber into bringing this type of workshop to you all. Terry and I have spent a lot of hours on the road going back and forth to training, and we've spent many of those hours talking about workforce and challenges that small business owners find that they struggle to solve. I have spent the last 18 years working for the West Kentucky Workforce Board Services, and the one thing that I've learned more than anything else is that workforce is an ever-changing dynamic in business. You just never know what's going to happen next. And we're going to talk about some of these challenges. We're going to talk about some of the solutions that the West Kentucky Workforce Board and our partners have done for local companies. So as Terry said, my name is Mary Ann Medlock. I've spent the last 18 years working in workforce development. I am one of 4 business service representatives that serves the 17-county area that the West Kentucky Workforce Board serves. We are federally created through the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, and we receive our funding through the Kentucky Education and Workforce Development Cabinet. So basically, I'm here from the government and I'm here to help. But at the same time, in all honesty, before I started doing this, I was a small business owner. For 7 years, I started and I ran my own company, and I found a time when it was a good time for me to leave, and so I sold my company and it lived on for another 15 years. So I felt like I had given it a good start. During our time together, I hope that you will learn a few solutions that can help you keep and grow a skilled workforce. But before I begin, I would like to get an idea on who is in the room. So please introduce yourself by telling me your first name, what your role within your organization is, and what your biggest challenge in workforce is. And we're going to start with what I call my gal pal here, Marlo.
My name is Marlo Rose, and I work with WKCTC Career Services. My biggest challenge is, I guess, recording who actually gets jobs for the services. I hold career fairs and things. I'll be glad to send everyone an invitation for the next one I'm taking. But yes, it's pretty much just getting those numbers of who is taking what position.
Okay. And you? Either one of you?
My name is Adam Schudica. This is Chance Copeland. We're store manager and assistant manager at Pet Food Center in Paducah. And our biggest challenge is just trying to keep people in with our job, or with our focus of our jobs and everything.
Okay. Hi.
I am Carter Geiger. I'm with Worthington Industries. Technically, we're not really a small business. We have about 90 employees here, and globally, we're like 12,000 employees. But I'm new to the area, so we struggle. We are a manufacturing plant, so we struggle with retaining our workforce because they get in there and realize it's a lot harder than it looks. We make it look really easy. We also have a pretty large maintenance crew that we struggle finding skilled workforce to get in our maintenance crew rooms.
Awesome.
Zach Smith and Helen Pope with the Housing Group and Clear Lines. From our workforce, confidentiality and trust is the main key that we look for with because of the nature of our business. And so fortunately, we hired last year and we went through a few people and had some issues with that, in the get-go of the interview process, but we did find someone. So when we're looking for someone, that is key, is trust and confidentiality of the nature of the business that we do.
That's a really good point, especially in your business. Ma'am?
Laura Hammond, I own Carlin's Concept Salon and Spa. We're brand new, we haven't been open a year yet. Our challenge is work hours.
Awesome. Ma'am?
I'm Sarah McGowan. I'm the adult services manager at the McCracken County Public Library, which obviously isn't a small business or any kind of business, but I think we have the same kind of challenges. We rely on a lot of part-time staff in the evening and weekends, so retention, recruitment, that kind of thing, training is difficult.
What about FMB?
Well, I'm Bob Turlock, Mike Nichols with FMB.
So let's go across here.
I'm Jason Goins with Site Work Survey and Design, and kind of stick with the same thing, recruitment and retention of employees is what I'm here to learn about.
Awesome.
Patrick Howe with HealthWorks Medical, the HR director. We have almost 100 employees, but we're still in a small business kind of mindset in the medical arena. But we're in a, Paducah is all things medical. It's kind of highly competitive to recruit skilled clinicians and providers in this area. So competing against larger medical entities and making competitive recruitment offers is probably one of our bigger struggles.
Lance?
Lance Allison, VFW Engineering and Markham Engineering, do business development for them. Probably if we had any growing pains, it would be highly specialized positions than, so we're growing.
Mhm. Mm-hmm.
I'm Bradley Schulte at FNB Bank. I agree with what Bob said about our bank. And I'm new to the bank. I think that probably, from what I see, it probably comes down to retention, where we train people up and they abandon you.
My name is Chris Hill with Entrepreneuring. I'm a small business coach and consultant. I'm a owner-operator and I haven't need to hire anybody yet, so workforce in that business is fine. I also own IHM Used Parts. We're a heavy equipment salvage yard based out of Graves County. And we've got pretty good retention as far as, most of our people have been there 6, 7, 8, 10 years. They're trying to get anybody new to come in, and even to interview for a sales position or a heavy equipment mechanic position. It's like going to extremely difficult even just to get people to show up.
Ghosting, which we're going to talk about. Ma'am?
My name is Taylor Reed. I work for Jennings and Associates Financial Advisors. I'm the office manager over there. And for us, it's basically finding that skilled niche employee that has the, education that we are looking for.
Awesome.
I'm Sherry Newcomb. I'm with Linda Miller CPA office. I'm a staff accountant there. And it's a ditto. It's finding that professional worker that can handle the workload and wants to get closer to the clients that we have, that they're more than just a job.
Mm.
I'm Andrea Wilson. I manage the firm at Ellen Miller CPA. And definitely that's why we're here, because one of our biggest struggles is the skilled employee.
Awesome. Sir?
I'm Chris Dallas. I'm working at Temps Plus with John Anderson. Basically, my job is to be a middleman for the workforce. It's something those workers for here, basically, so whoever needs it.
And you struggle with the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah, trying to make it work,
Yeah.
luring the people.
Yeah.
Make them want to stay.
Awesome.
I'm Alberta Davis, and we have pharmacies. And when I hire somebody, they stay with me a really long time if they make it through the first year. But we have 72 employees, and it's really hard to find a person to work in a pharmacy because they have to pass the drug screening and everything. So it's a tough job.
And Sissy?
And I'm Sissy Fox with the Purchase Area Development District, and I work in the Workforce Development Department, and I'm the training coordinator, so my job is trying to get that prepared workforce to send out to you all.
Awesome. And Terry, would you like to contribute?
Just to ditto what Patrick said, as a small business in the healthcare industry, we struggle. We have had employees for 10, 20, 30 years, but with the shift in healthcare, with the long care, we can't offer the same healthcare benefits as the hospitals can. So we find that the large entities can easily snipe employees by one with one benefit. So that's a struggle for small business.
It is. So thank you all for walking through that exercise with me. And I think what you found is that no matter the size of your business, you're experiencing a lot of the same issues. And so I'm hoping that today that you'll be able to actually walk away with a few things to think about and a few resources that you can call upon. So let's group some of these things into some categories. For the most part, you have a hard time retaining the employees, and it sounds like that's what you are most interested in. And when I was preparing my presentation, that probably was the most difficult section, because retention has a lot to do with company culture. And while I can come in and look at your culture and offer you ideas, some of those things are dictated from a higher level. If you work for if your company is an international company, some of that culture is mandated from corporate that may be somewhere else. If you're a small business, you're much more flexible and you can make changes. But hopefully, through this exercise and through the materials that I'll be sending out afterwards to you all, you'll get some things that you can take away. So every day I talk to employers with my job, and I kind of consider myself a first responder to your issues. I like to come in and evaluate and look at what you're doing, and what I'm finding is no matter what sector an employer is in, no matter how large their business is or where they're located across our region, they all have the same situation. So let's go here. Employers are struggling to keep new talent that they've successfully recruited while their most knowledgeable, most loyal employees are dancing out the door with their retirement. It's creating a double whammy effect that can disrupt business and interfere with productivity and profitability. In many ways, I believe that we're in a workforce revolution. And there's a disconnect with how employers recruit and how job seekers search. We have multiple generations in the workforce now, and with multiple goals and multiple ideas of what a work-life balance requirement is for themselves. Do you realize that millennials have been in the workplace for 10 years? For a long time, lots of folks were millennial bashing. Well, now those millennials are our key supervisors. In many ways, they are a part of our administration. So they are comfortably in the workforce. They have transitioned really well. And this year alone, starting with this graduating class, Gen Zers, Generation Z, is joining the workforce. Trying to decide if I want to show you a video yet or not, and I think I'm going to wait. You are the expert on your product and on your customers. As a business decision maker, you are the subject matter expert on your company, your product, and your customers. After all, hope is not a strategy. To be a successful employer, you also have to be a subject matter expert on your employees. You have to know why they work for you instead of someone else, what makes your environment, your policies appealing to them, while also creating inclusion, diversity, productivity, and supportive atmosphere. You have to discover your own uniqueness as an employer and then sell it to potential employees. But first, you have to develop a plan that will help you attract your most expensive asset, and that's your human capital. So let's take a look at talent recruitment. Hiring practices have relied on the gathering of passive information, oftentimes old information. After all, resumes talk about what you've got, but it talks about your history. So these hiring practices have an eye towards making the best judgment possible about an individual's future. Regardless of how skilled your intuition for talent is, this approach relies too much on guesswork. If you're still using the same methods to recruit talent you did back in the recession, you might want to think about renewing the way you do things. And if you are using the same recruitment goals you used last year, we still might need to look at it to see if it works for today's workforce. So where are you looking for talent? The new recruitment reality is that finding a job is tough for each individual who is looking to join the labor market. Job seekers and even workforce professionals like Marlo, Sissy, and myself, we struggle to even begin to help somebody find a job because it's so fragmented. Back in the old days, you could pick up the newspaper, especially on the Sunday, and you could see what jobs were being advertised. Job seekers don't look there anymore. and advertisers struggle to pay for the inches that it takes to adequately recruit someone. No one resource is a definitive tool and you have to decide where your job seekers are looking. Are they looking online? Are they looking at job boards or company websites? Are they using Facebook or other social media? Are they using their friend network? Are they attending job fairs? Are they utilizing the Kentucky Career Center or college career offices? There are dozens and dozens and dozens of places for people to find a job just here in Paducah, much less across the region and across the globe. You have to decide where you think your job seekers for your sector are going to look for jobs and make sure that you're there. And here's another thing. Do job seekers even know you exist? Have they heard of your company? Do they know what you do? If they don't, how do they find you and how do they find your positions? To become a successful recruiter, you have to look through the process from a job seeker's perspective. If you aren't doing something to get noticed by the right job seekers, you may be making it harder on yourself to find talent. Now, as I said before, we have 5 generations in the workplace. Let's look at this group. Primarily, we have baby boomers, Gen Xers, and millennials in the workplace. Now we've got Gen Zers. Gen Zers were born between 1995 and 2010. And the oldest of that group is 22, and they're just now entering the workforce. So I have a video that I'm going to show you. How many of you all have ever heard of Rooster Teeth? Anybody? Well, I'm not surprised by that considering who's in the room, but a couple of people back there I thought you might have heard of Rooster Teeth, thought you might be gamers. Rooster Teeth is an online entertainment network that has been around for 15 years. They create original content and they have shows that are based on games and video play and conversation. In the past 15 years, they've had over 10 billion downloads of their content, and they've got 45 million subscribers. When they launch a product, whether it's a t-shirt or a game or a board game, it is immediately sold. A couple of years ago, they decided to see if they wanted to invent a new game. So they put it out to their subscribers and said, what do you all think about this? And they crowdfunded their project. It was in 3 days. It's incredible. So I'm going to show you a video that my son, who is a Gen Zer, showed me. He thought it was hysterical. He actually bridges the millennial Gen Zer. He's kind of the last year of a millennial, but he really is more of a Gen Zer based on his attitude. And he showed me this video because he thought it was so funny because he's heard us talk about different generations in the workplace. So this is a sketch from Rooster Teeth, who is owned and operated by millennials.
Hey, Ashley, do you have a minute? Yeah. What's up? Well, I'm writing a sketch about Y2K, and I want to talk to somebody who lived through it. Yeah, I thought it was going to be a little more exciting, but me, I'm nothing. I mean, you lived through it, right? Yeah, I guess, but barely. Barely? Well, I was born in 99. I'm sorry. Like 1999? Yeah, I'm a Gen Z baby. But you're them. You didn't just be so. I must warn the others.
I still think that the Frogger episode is the best one. I'm partial to the one where Dorothy's out of the trash.
Quickly, boys, there's no time. Hey guys, I have to tell you. I was wondering if I could get some help on a sketch.
Oh, real quick, what's your favorite Seinfeld episode?
Oh no, please! Oh, never seen it. Actually, went off air before I was born, so.
Why? I have.
What is happening?
Oh, Barbara, thank God. We got to you before she did. We tried to text you, but none of us could remember how to do that.
What's the letters?
Oh, nostalgia trip. This is like my first phone ever.
Hey, Barb, I was wondering if, oh, wow. That's crazy. What is that?
Oh, Barbara, no!
Oh, just everyone's first phone. I think I got mine in like sophomore year.
Of high school?
Please!
Oh, I got my first phone in 3rd grade. Where are the letters?
No.
It was a hand-me-down from my mom.
Oh God.
It was an iPhone. Hey, Bernie, do you remember where you were during 9/11?
Well, sure.
Because I don't.
Bernie, no! Why? Why isn't it affecting you? Eventually just reach an age where you're stuck in.
Please, help us fix it.
Fine, let's go do this real fast. Gotta come back. I got more work here. What's that smell? It's me. Hey, Christina, remind me, do you have a Roth IRA or a 401k?
I don't know what those are.
Oh, the retirement plans. Do you rent or own a home?
I live in an Airbnb makerspace with a couple of people I met on Snapchat.
Oh, that sounds so cool. I've owned a home for 10 years. I say we owned a home. My wife of 12 years and I, we own a home together.
What are you doing to me?
Don't you think avocado toast is just like guacamole bread? Yuck.
No!
You know, I've never been able to tell Zach and Cody apart.
Zach is just a little taller.
You know, I've never played Fortnite. Do you think I can floss?
No!
Should we fun?
And it digresses from there. But you get the point. You get the point. So as the more he adults her, the smaller she gets. So let's talk about a case study. Hope isn't a recruitment strategy. The problem. Company A operates a 24/7 facility and needs trained medical and non-medical staff to cover each shift. Some positions require a degree, others do not. The company posts its positions on its website, on online job banks, and spends a day each month at the local career center. Despite this effort, they're struggling to find employees. For all the efforts that they're making, they aren't getting good candidates. How can this solution be improved? So I went into this company because they called because they were struggling to find employees. And when I started talking to them about what was going on with their company, I always realized and helped them to understand that workforce issues, recruitment issues, retention issues, it's workforce development, it's just a plate of spaghetti. You have to pull at the noodles in order to get an idea on what's really going on, because there isn't one solution. Whenever an employer calls me, I try to look at their critical pain point, because that's what they've called me for, but I also try to look at the other things that could be causing the problem. With this situation, we looked at the many factors that are contributing to their low qualified candidate numbers. I want to help them improve their application to new hire rate and address the reason why they're losing employees. The employer's receiving lots of applications thanks to their presence on web-based job sites, but few of those applications actually lead to a new hire, making the process overwhelming and frustrating for their HR manager. It's exciting to receive 50 applications overnight because of these web-based job sites. But when you realize you've spent hours going through all these applications and you don't get any qualified candidates, that's when you start to realize that you have a problem. Or you can't find anybody to actually call for an interview, or you do call somebody for an interview and they don't actually show up. Or if you get through the interview and they don't show up their first day. My challenge was to improve their application to new hire rate by developing a recruitment plan that gives them real applications from real job seekers and not curious onlookers. Thankfully, I have a network of talent resources in addition to my federal and state workforce partners. I partner with WKCTC, Murray State, and UK. I also partner with the area technology centers and the high schools. I partner with any place that I can find a potential employee who is ready to go to work. Through these partnerships, I can introduce employers to additional talent avenues that they're not using. I also try to get an understanding of where their best employees are coming from, so that way we can look at that talent pipeline and see if we need to broaden it. So my first solution was to implement a recruiting plan that generates more qualified applicants and creates a pool of potential employees. Right now, you can visit their website and you can see their positions that they're advertising. You can click a link to their employment application. But there's no button to upload a resume or a cover letter. There is no button that'll allow you to email for more information. But more importantly, when you click this link, what you get is an application that you then have to print and fill out. Now, how many of you all have working printers at home? I don't. Oh, well, of course the engineer would, Chris, but I don't. I don't have a working printer, and most job seekers don't either. So if you're unemployed or you are employed and you want to fill out this application, you first have to have a place to print it, then you have to fill it out. The next issue was, on the application, there's no place or information that says where to send the application. There's no mailing address, there's no email address, there's not even a fax number. It's just an application. So, I believe they're losing some of their best candidates because they have created a static barrier to individuals actually applying for their jobs. So we're working on that. We've suggested that there's a button where people can upload an application, and we also are looking at how we can take that static application and make it active so that way you can fill it out online and submit it and not have to worry about printing it or where it should go. I've also asked them to start looking at analytics for that particular page on their website. So that way they have an idea on how much traffic that page is generating and how many clicks they're getting as opposed to how many applications they're actually receiving. It's a solution in progress. So that was my second solution, was to improve how they actually get applications. So from this case study, we have learned that don't assume your process is working just because you're getting applications. Okay, just because you're making noise and getting things back doesn't mean that it's working. You also need to look for ways to improve the candidate experience, because believe me, my 23-year-old, he has applied for every company I think that there is, and he's become an expert on their websites. And there are companies that I think are absolutely great companies and I want him to apply for, but he's walking away from them because of the frustration he has with their process. He does not like the third-party application process where a lot of companies will send them because he's uploaded his resume, he's filled out the information, and unless he doesn't have the right keywords, he's not even going to get a look, so he stopped looking for them. So he has stopped looking at major companies that I feel like that he has skills to do. So look for ways to improve the candidate experience and check everything. And maybe have a Gen Zer go through your process, and a baby boomer, and a traditionalist, and a Gen X. And make sure the process of accepting applications are easy. So does any of that sound familiar? Did any of that help you realize that perhaps first finding the talent is a problem? So now let's shift gears. Job seekers have found your positions. You've got great candidates who are applying for your jobs. What if your new hire doesn't show up for their first day of work? Or they show up and they leave by lunch? Then you haven't fixed the problem. You've only fixed a part of the problem. They've just ghosted you. You can call them, you can text them, you can email them, but they've already blocked your number and you will never hear from these people again. Or the next, or the next, or the next, until you figure out why they ghosted you to begin with. The way I think about it is, my mother used to have this saying is, don't be the dog who chases cars and then doesn't understand what to do with it once he's caught it. So job ghosting is on the rise, and according to USA Today, last summer they did an article talking about the fact that in May of last year, more ghosting occurred than any other point in time. And I think it has to do with the new generation. They come in, they make a quick decision about your company because they've already done an online search. They've already Googled everything. They've talked to their friends. They've looked at Yelp. They've looked at every online review that your company has. And they've made decisions, and they may have shown up and they may have left. So in May of last year, the Bureau of Labor Statistics actually calculates how many workers quit jobs each month and moved to other employment. So 2.4% did so in May of last year, and it'll be interesting to see if that same trend happens in May of this year, which of course is, May is the largest graduation. It's typically June and July are the largest spikes in unemployment rates because you have more job seekers entering the market. So last year, we'll see what happens. But what USA Today said that it was the largest share of people quitting jobs and moving to other employment in 17 years. So here's the solution. You need to look at your employee onboarding process, and you have to use the tools that you use to gain new customers to keep your new employees, because they are also your customers. You have to develop an employee onboarding. 69% of new hires say that they're more likely to stay 3 years if they experience a well-structured onboarding process. So what does typically onboarding look like? Well, they show up the first day, they stand in your lobby, and they wait for somebody to come get them. That person may or may not really be really nice to them because they've already been pulled away from their desk, and they've got to figure out what to do with them, and they dump them in the HR office first. Or they dump them in accounting where they fill out paperwork all morning long, and they probably haven't gotten a warm welcome. So you need to take your existing process and build a strong onboarding program that is an opportunity to energize your new employees right away and allow them to relax into their position. Don't be the type of company where they come in and you give them a keychain or you give them a coffee mug with the company logo on it within their first couple of hours. Or worse, don't give them the old logo work. Give them something new and make them part of the team. So here's a few ways to do that. Prepare for your new hire for a successful first day, the first week, and consider their situation as fragile for the first 30 days. Unless you're a small company, your human resources department can tell you where your fragile points are within the first year of employment. You've got the data, you've got all the analytics to tell you where these fragile points are and to tell you who your fragile supervisors are. And then you have to improve the analytics. First, you need to get the rest of your team excited that somebody's going to come on board. And that team's got to understand that they can't just dump all their unfinished work on this new person. You have to help everybody be successful in this situation. Take the time to update the team personally and let them know what this person will be doing, because the team you have to reduce the natural anxiety that happens when somebody new comes on board. And you have to make sure that they understand what their role is going to be. For the new employee, you have to make sure that the employees have what they need. Like, do they have a workstation, or what tools do they need to have? Set up their workstation. Make sure that everything's working. Make sure their email works. Make sure they know what their phone number is in case they need to give it to family. Give it to them beforehand. In advance of their arrival, reduce their downtime and set positive perceptions of what the team works like. And for goodness sakes, make sure that their space is clean. I mean, we've all seen old television sketches where the new hire gets put in a closet with all the broken furniture. Nowadays, we can't afford to do that anymore. We need every employee that we recruit. So make sure that they understand that you want them there. Your new employee has made important changes in their personal lives to join your company. They may have just left their old job with all their old friends. They may have moved. They may have finished a degree and this is their first job. They may have had to change daycare. They may have had to change carpools. They maybe have set foot and you're the first rung in a new career ladder for them. For some, finding your position has been like climbing Mount Everest. And for others, getting up, getting in the car, maneuvering new traffic patterns, and driving to your parking lot has been overwhelming. The thought of walking into your building without a clue of what their day will look like can be terrifying. And here's the thing, they've gotten up, they've managed the traffic, they've gotten to your parking lot, and they've just walked through their doors. Don't miss the opportunity to authentically welcome them to your company, because if you don't, they will not stay with your company. Successful onboarding is a much bigger issue than what we really have time for today, but I am going to be sending you a resource that has checklists and has templates that you can use to help improve your own employee onboarding process. But I suggest you talk to your recent new hires and let them talk to you openly and honestly and authentically about what their experience was. You can't just make an offer and hope that they show up. You've got to engage them from the beginning, and you have to help them see what role they have in your company. Even if it is standing on a line or washing dishes or whatever it is, they have to feel like that they are wanted and that they are needed and that they have a role in your company's productivity. And as I said, this is the hardest part of my presentation because for every company it's different. According to the Harvard Business Review, 40% of workers are planning to look for a new job within the next 6 months, and 69% say they're actively, passively looking. It amazes me whenever I put job orders on an online job bank for companies, because we do that, how many people are actually apply. It's not just the number of people, it's the type of people who are passively looking. And, you know, I see them all over town. I know these people who are applying for these positions. And it kind of surprises me because I thought that they were very successful and very happy at their companies. But in the end, those online job banks really are all about curious onlookers. Finding employees and retaining them in the face of rapid shifting personnel and professional needs in a bullish marketplace might feel like you're trying to trap a magical unicorn. There are lots of reasons why employees leave, and the reality is people build careers and their wages by job hopping. Few are interested in long-term employment and pension plans. Rarely will you find someone who stays with a company their entire career. It's not the same as it was. It's not like our parents or our grandparents who committed to a company from day one and expected that company to commit back. We've gone through too many shutdowns. We've gone through too many buyouts. We've gone through too many situations in the economy for people to feel that way anymore. And for the kids who are coming out now, in many ways, it's likely that their parents went through the NAFTA shutdowns that happened in the mid-2000s or through the recession. So they're not committed, they don't expect to be committed to any employer. And you have to figure out how to help them commit to you by giving them a reason to stay. If you do that, then hopefully you'll get a commitment from them, but they have to understand why they're there other than just to draw a paycheck. Case study number 2. I actually pulled this one off the internet because I'm working with several companies on their retention piece, and it was really just too close to home. I couldn't mask it in any kind of way. So, the Work Institute has several case studies on their website where they have worked with companies to identify this issue. One in particular, in 2013, they assisted Parkview Hospital in Fort Wayne, Indiana, to reduce the high cost of turnover and to reduce the number of first-year nurses who leave the hospital. They implemented a simple solution of a telephone exit interview. Former employees were asked to provide all the reasons why they left and identify the most important reason. Next, they were asked to rate onboarding, supervision, compliance, and organization on a scale. Interviewers asked the former employees for specific reasons why they provided each rating and offered them suggestions to improve each. Now, we did this last summer with a company. they had experienced a high rate of turnover, and thankfully, because a third party was doing this, they answered the phone. They weren't going to answer it from the company, but they did answer it from a third company. And here's what this hospital learned, and it pretty much matches what this manufacturing company learned. Pay was not the number one reason why people leave. It rarely is. They know what they're going to earn when they walk in the door. And if they haven't decided that that rate isn't sufficient, then that's a whole nother issue. But most of the time, they know what they need to make on an hourly basis or as a salary to maintain their sustainability. So pay is not the number one reason. Expectations for the job was the top drivers for turnover. Management learned that their onboarding processes could be improved. Same thing with the manufacturing company. 2-day orientation, and they were out on the line. People don't always learn in 2 days, no matter how easy the project is. There's a point to where you have to help the employee tell you that they understand the process by demonstrating it. You can't just go, got it? And they go, yeah, I got it. They don't got it, do they? They don't understand. And finally, data analysis uncovered regions and business units that needed additional assistance. And here's the thing, you have to act on those things. If you have a supervisor who is not creating and empowering a team, then that supervisor needs to go to supervisor training and needs to really look at whether or not they need to be a supervisor. Because that one person could damage your company in a lot bigger way than what you ever expect. So here's the way that we always like to think about it. We need to retain through motivation and through training. Different manufacturing company told me back in December, we really need people to know how to use Excel. I agree. You do need to have people in your office and in your shipping who know Excel. And here's how you can do that. April, I get a phone call. We need to teach people how to do Excel. Well, did you call the people that I gave you contacts for? Did you develop that plan? Did you implement this? No, we got caught up in something else and we didn't actually pursue that. Let's try this again. May 1st. I still need to teach people Excel. Yes, you do. And I'm happy to help you do that. But we need to set some dates and we need to move forward on this. And oh, by the way, we're willing to help you offset the cost of that training. People get caught up in their jobs and they get caught up in everything else, and suddenly it becomes a crisis that could have been avoided. And what I am learning about what people need for Excel training isn't necessarily the ability to run Excel, but it's really a math issue. What we should have done first is put adult education in there to teach them how to program formulas and to understand formulas, so that way when we get to Excel training, it's maximize the effort. And lastly, I would be remiss if I don't talk about what we do and how we do what we do with the Kentucky Career Center's Business Services team. So the federal law that the Workforce Board operates under requires a business services team of the federal and state partners to come together and to serve employers and to provide employer engagement. So each month, the federal and state partners who work at the Kentucky Career Center, along with our college career centers, our ATCs, various programs, local programs that are doing workforce development, we get together once a month and we talk about the problems that we're hearing from employers and solutions for them. And we do a lot of different things to do that. And we understand that sometimes our programs are not the best solution for your workforce. So that's why we work across all the partners, because we have all these different programs that are out there to help you. We have 4 key focus areas. We help employers recruit and do job placement. We provide customized training. We provide training incentives for specific members of the labor market. For instance, the Kentucky Farm Worker Program helps employers hire people who have worked for a farmer or on the farm for the last 2 years. The West Kentucky Workforce Board offsets and provides wage incentives if you hire a dislocated worker who's lost their position through no fault of their own, and you're hiring them in and replacing their wages. Or you're taking somebody who's never been in the labor market before and you're offering their first job, and perhaps they're receiving public assistance. There's all these different silos, whether it's for voc rehab, whether it's veterans, whether it's dislocated workers, low-income adults, farm workers. There's a wide spectrum. And we're also real excited about the fact that we've got 2 programs that the West Kentucky Workforce Board is funded that you, as Paducah employers, can access. We have an in-school youth program where we'll provide an internship opportunity at your place where you become a mentor for these youth and help them move into employment. And we also have a program for 18 to 24-year-olds who are looking to get into the labor market. For that group, we will actually provide their wages and cover their workman's comp while they're gaining experience in your company. So we have lots of different services out there. And finally, through our partners, there's training incentives. The Kentucky Cabinet for Economic Development offers Bluegrass State Skills, which helps offset the cost of your incumbent worker training. KCTCS, through Workforce Solutions, I'm sure all you all know Kevin O'Neill and his crew that offer Kentucky Trains, which will reduce the cost of customized incumbent worker training for you. OJT and incumbent worker contracts, that's me. Pell Grants, work opportunity tax credits, and federal bonding. If you are looking to hire someone that may have a past, that they have the skills, but you're just concerned that because they have a felony, you're concerned about your workplace or loss of income, the state of Kentucky will provide you a federal bond that was an extra insurance to cover their employment. Finally, we provide technical assistance. I feel like I talk all day long to employers, and I do. I talk all day long to employers, and I try to make each solution unique to their workplace. But all of our programs provide that technical assistance. We offer our wage reimbursement programs, and then of course our tax credits, federal bonds, and soft skills credentialing. So that's what I have today. I have one final case study for you that demonstrates how the partners that the West Kentucky Workforce Board has through our Kentucky Career Center. We have been actively involved with a specific employer who is located to the region, and they needed to hire several hundred individuals. They needed their HR piece not to occur necessarily at the facility because of construction and different things going on at the facility. So we moved their recruitment piece to the Kentucky Career Center, and we accepted all their applications that they received for their hourly workers. We processed every single individual. We made sure that they had a complete application, and then those who met the qualifications, WKCTC actually did a work aptitude test, and then we packaged all that together and we provided it to the HR department. So for the last few months, I have been on the road collecting applications, collecting aptitude tests, packaging them all together and making them available to the HR department. And that happens a lot with companies who come new to town because they oftentimes don't have HR people to begin with, and they don't have a website to be able to collect applications, and they don't have all the pieces in place. So we did all that work for them up front, so that way when they got their applications and they got their spreadsheets showing the applicants and what they've applied for in their aptitude test, they could make decisions quickly and move through their process and help them get on target with their employment needs. So those are the types of things we do. I hope that if you all have any questions that you'll reach out to me. Like I said, I've got materials that we'll be sending out to you. I am available at any time. You can call the chamber to find me, or I've got business cards. Does anybody have any questions? Not a single question. Yes, ma'am.
So if they have open positions at their job, I know you said there's a lot of different ways to collect, and not all of them
There's not one single place, including the one through the Kentucky Career Center, which I don't necessarily use every time. I use it for certain positions, and I encourage employers to use Kentucky Career Center for certain positions, but not all the time. Whether you're using any of the online national brands, I've helped employers use one specific website, Indeed, when they needed something quickly. I've been able to post one night, 3 days later, we had enough applications we could start pulling for interviews, and we had people to work the next week. I mean, that was fast. That was fast. We opened it on Wednesday, we interviewed on Monday, and they were on work by Friday. But you can't always use one specific one, because job seekers look at different ones. Even the chamber has a job bank, but I don't know what the analytics are for that job bank and how well employers recognize that they're getting applications from the chamber. I don't know if there's a performance bench for that. I've used everything out there, and it is a struggle oftentimes. And then you've got this whole thing of how do you market a position? That's what I spend a lot of time working with employers with, and I know that Temps Plus does the same thing. You have to figure out the keywords that job seeker is using. I know that both, I did it for one company, and a couple of weeks later, you guys used the same concept for another company. I had a company in Hickman, a manufacturing facility, that needed people for their third shift. They had a hard time finding people to fill those jobs. So I came up with a concept of we just needed, some really good lazy bones. We needed people who like to sleep till noon, and did a Facebook campaign about the fact that it's a person in bed hitting their snooze button, and about, do you like to sleep till noon, or whatever it was. And it was really successful, and it worked for that employer. You guys use the same concept for another person. That's cool, It worked. It worked in those areas, and it helped them staff up. Same thing with another company. They needed heavy equipment operators, and they didn't necessarily need certified heavy equipment operators. So I did a campaign for them on Facebook that talked about the fact that you really enjoy playing with Tonka toys. Did you really like playing in the dirt? Well, come work for us, and we'll give you an opportunity and train you to work in the dirt. You have to find that stuff, but you've got to be really careful with it. I don't offer it to every employer and for every job description, because it would be exhausting. Social media is full of people trying to sell people stuff. And I want to control and make sure that they think that the Workforce Board isn't always selling something. But when the position is appropriate, I put it there, and I put a link. So that way we've got analytics, we've got performance. I'm sure you guys do the same thing, because we have to be accountable to the employers we serve. So you have to figure out where they're looking. People who are looking to be employed at a bank, they're not going to be looking on Facebook for jobs. They're going to be looking on LinkedIn. They're going to be looking at your website. They're going to know about you. People who are looking to be an accountant, they may be looking at different sites too. They may be looking probably at the traditional places. Perhaps putting an ad in the paper might be more beneficial than putting something on Indeed, because on Indeed, the curious onlookers. One company I did, yes, Chris, I'm going to get to you. So one company I worked with that we did Indeed, they wanted, it was for an accounting clerk, and they wanted someone who could use Excel really efficiently. So we put one of the tests on there. You can put like an aptitude test, and we did just a level 1 Excel, and we knocked out most of the people who applied because they didn't know how to do Excel. So it just depends. Chris?
Earlier in your presentation, you were talking about the number one reason why people leave, and I think you said it was expectations. Can you unpack that a little bit more as far as specifics on that?
So when people go through an interview process, one of the things they want to understand is what you do. What does the position do? And you should have a job description that accurately reflects the position. But what happens in most cases that I work with is that job descriptions have not been updated literally since the recession. And I talk about the recession because that's when most companies made major changes to their HR departments. That's when they started putting barriers up to help control the number of applications they were receiving. Even though here in Western Kentucky, we weren't really hit the way the rest of the country was. It was perceived unemployment for us. We had already gone through all that with NAFTA. We'd already done all that between 2001 and 2004. So here, there were certain markets that was hit, but because nationally it was spoken so highly of, HR departments went through and changed their job descriptions, their basic requirements. They changed all these things. So the job descriptions have stayed the same, and they haven't addressed the modern office. And believe me, offices work differently in 2019 than they did in 2009. And job descriptions, even my own, have drifted. What my job description says I do is not what I do. So when they look at your job description, they expect that that's what they're going to do, but the reality of the job is different. So that's one of the things we look at, is how to improve the job description and make sure it matches. And I utilize the Department of Labor's website called Occupational Network of Titles to make sure that your job is in line with your job description and that your wages are in line with the West Kentucky Balance of State. So those are two of the things that I do. So expectations. You think you're going to do this and you don't do that? Well, I think I'm going to go somewhere that I can do this because that's what I went to school for, that's what I trained for, that's what I have a passion to do. It's not this. Anybody else? No? Well, it's 3 after 9. I want to thank you all so much for coming. And again, I want to thank FMB, Lundberg Imaging, and WPSD for their sponsorship, and the Paducah Area Chamber of Commerce for having me this morning. Thank you so much and have a great day.